Hello guys, this is Lucas Drummer. Welcome to another reparation and maintenance videos on your axis pedals. This video is going to directly focus on the issue when the auxiliary beater doesn't come back or get stuck at the axle. Sometimes you can experience a problem where the beater arm does have this kind of friction. It goes forward but it doesn't want to come back. Most of us would blame this on the UDS, the Universal Drive Shaft, which by the way I'm showing on my previous reparation and maintenance video how to fix, how to restore. But out of my own experience, I know that most of these problems are not related to the UDS. They are related to the axle rods actually. So just to show you quickly, this one is pretty new. It works perfectly fine, both swings easily both back and forth. You got the same system on both the auxiliary beater and the main pedal, so it works very smooth, no sounds at all, no friction at all. Sometimes it can happen that the screw on the kit is rubbing against the main pole on the pedal. So have a look at that, because this would be number one thing I would check out before I will go any deeper. And yeah, let's get down to the thing. So just so we know, this is the part that goes on top here, right? This is the same element, just a classic black finish. It's older. It's 5 years old now. Recently I've noticed that the beater doesn't travel so easily as it should and as it did before. And the reason for that is there are bearings both in there and outside there. Here's where the do not remove sticker goes. I have certainly removed it. You have to do it in order to do this reparation. And before you invest, before you buy any parts, before you use your money on any kind of new elements, try this. First of all, here's what you're gonna need. Of course, the part you're gonna be fixing, which is the auxiliary arm. We're gonna use some Allen wrenches. You're going to need kind of a pipey object, which is empty inside, and that fits over the axle rod like that. You need the syringe or any other applicator with some oil. It's 5W30 engine oil I'm using here for lubrication of the bearings and all the moving elements inside. And in the end we're gonna apply some good quality Loctite. Good thread locker, always handy, you know, on all the screws that may go loose on your pedal. As of course a hammer. That's what you need. So this is what you do. Here's your auxiliary beater arm with the bridge, and we are starting off by loosening these two screws there. You have to free the axle first of all, because we're gonna move it sideways a little bit. The beater assembly is moving freely on the axle. The axle is still sitting hard in the bearings, in the whole block, but this is important, that this one moves freely. Not necessarily that it spins around the axle, because you have this flat part there where the screws are going against, but that it's loose. Next thing we're gonna do, grab a piece of wood or something you can support your element on. So in my case I'm using this 2x4, and we are gonna support the entire block, like here, against the 2x4. And what we're gonna do next is to hit with a hammer on top of there, so that we make the axle rod move out of the housing. You don't need to remove it completely unless you want to change the entire axle rod or the bearings, but that's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna fix it, not replace it. Now, as you can see, it wasn't too much work, but now the entire axle is free. You see? And there we have some washers. There's 2 of them that keep the entire axle in place. Alright, now the entire thing is loose. And we are ready to start fixing it. I would go even further and knock the axle even more out. This way you can completely remove it, just so you know. But now we can press the axle on this side, and voila, there we have our bearing. The other bearing sits inside there, and it's easily removable once you get the entire axle rod out. Now it's a good time to lubricate the just inspect inside of the housing if there is any wear. If the entire housing is intact, then you're very good to go. You can just grab your syringe or whatever applicator you have, put some oil in onto the first bearing, just like that. Was a little bit too much, but just suck it up again. Alright, there we have it. Alright, and on the other one, important to keep your paddles lubricated. It is for a long time problem-free functioning. Okay, and now we don't really need to remove those washers, you know, we can always swap them as well, but I don't see any bends on them, so I guess they are working properly. Now what do? We support the element almost the same way as we did when moving the axle rod out, but now we're gonna support the axle rod directly on top of the 2x4, and here where this bit holder comes handy. As you can see, it's empty inside, fits perfectly on the axle rod. The important thing is that it goes over the axle rod and pushes against the washers. So this is what you do. Like this. Put the pipe object on top, hold it, and start banking with your hammer very lightly, and observe, simultaneously observe the bearing settle down in the housing. Alright, now we're very close to where we want it to be. Let's check out the axle rod. It's not moving sideways, which is good. That would tell me that we are very close to the very sweet spot where we want it, because that's all about it is to find a sweet spot on the level of pressure those washers apply in order to keep the axle stable. Anyway, if there is too much friction from those washers against the bearing, this arm will lock. This will not go fluently. So find your sweet spot, find the place where it's nice and tight, like this. You see, it's a little bit over the top now, and it doesn't want to come back on its own weight. That means it's a little bit too far. But on the other hand, your beater should not travel more than 90 degrees from your starting position. So if the beater starts in there, you shouldn't go over 90 degrees below that. Okay, it's a little bit too tight now, so what I'm gonna do is to knock it back a little bit. Now look how smoothly it works, how smoothly it goes back and forth, right? There's no sideways motion whatsoever, not a little bit of a wobble, nothing. It's, yeah, what should I say, rock solid. So this was the most important part of the whole process, so we know. While we're here, if we don't want our paddle to get wobbly within the course of time, we apply some of the Loctite, just a little tiny droplet, don't need much of it, and it's very expensive, so you don't really have to flood it with the Loctite, otherwise it's gonna be a pain in the ass to remove the screws when you need to remove them. With this little amount of Loctite, it's just enough to break the seal, like by knocking once with a hammer against the Allen wrench, or hitting it up with a lighter or any other source of heat. And then we find the middle of where we want the auxiliary beater arm to be, align it nicely with the flat surface of the axle rod underneath, and grab it nicely with one of the screws. I didn't tighten it all the way down because there are two screws, so take one at a time, a little bit, not too much, no overkill. Back to the first one, tighten it up, back to the second one, tighten it up. Now we're all way in. As good as new, without changing a single part, applying just a little bit of lubrication, and actually this whole hitting thing is the most important of all. This is what you're gonna do. Sometimes you have to try a little back and forth, but it's very easy, because if you want to tighten it, you just knock it on this way. If you want to loosen it, knock it this way. I consider this one fully refurbished and functional, and it's ready to rock. Anyway, I hope this helps. If you got any other questions about reparations or maintenance on your Axis double or single pedals, whichever element it may concern, feel free to approach me. I'm going to show you all I can. And by the way, since we are already here, I got a question from Giuliano from Axis Pedals group on the Facebook, cheers mate, about what the functionality of these two screws here is. So this is a very quick one. Let me just grab one of those wrenches here. This is what you do. As we all know, at least those who use Axis pedals as a double pedal, whenever we use them as a double pedal, the auxiliary beater, the one that goes here, strikes the head a little bit off center. This one hits perfectly in the middle of a drum, but this one doesn't. So let me show you what this thing does. Alright, let me just put the beater on the auxiliary arm. If we loosen these two screws in front of this arm, we can tilt the very beater in or out. Like this. Which means this beater is not going to hit the head so much off center as it would if it was to the extreme left position. So tilting helps a lot. Alright guys, I hope this helps. It was a pleasure to make this video for you, and see you next time.